Hello and welcome to $5 Hockey Mask. If you've been here before, welcome back. A year ago yesterday, I posted my first video. It was about urban spook, and it was terrible. My initial plan for the $5 Hockey Mask 1 year anniversary / Halloween special, but not really since it's the day after, was a sort of part 2 to that. I was gonna revisit the series a year later to correct some things I said in the first part and see if I felt the same about the painter after the dust had settled. But then I found out that Urban actually planned on making a couple more episodes to finish the series off. Episode 9 is already out as I'm writing this intro, and I'm gonna hold off on that until the finale comes out. Instead, this anniversary / Halloween special, but not really since it's the day after, would focus on something else entirely. I'll be honest, I did actually plan on having this up on Halloween and then having a separate anniversary thing on the 1st, but then I had midterms, so neither of those things happened. It's actually kind of fitting that it worked out like this. My first video was posted the day after it was supposed to be, and now the video that was supposed to go up on the same day as that one is also a day late. Anyway, during the spooky season, it's pretty common for people to talk about things that scared them when they were younger. Usually things they really shouldn't have been seeing at that age, but hey, that's the internet for you. No, not like that. That's for a therapist to figure out. I'm talking about creepypastas. Okay. Creepypasta retrospectives are nothing new, but I've noticed that people tend to do them pretty negatively. Most people you see making revisiting classic creepypastas videos always do Jeff the Killer, Red Mist, Eyeless Jack, Sonic.exe, and all the other ones in that story that sucks but has a creepy visual attached to it that makes it popular camp. Or at least creepy by the standards of a bunch of 10-year-olds with unrestricted internet access. As much as I agree that those stories aren't the best and like to laugh at how bad they are, only focusing on the negatives glosses over all the seriously effective horror stories that have come out of the community. Those are the ones I want to cover in this video. 8 stories that scared me as a kid and still do now. Gateway of the Mind is an anonymously written story posted in 2009. It documents an experiment carried out in 1983 that tried to scientifically prove the existence of God. The researchers theorized that God is there, but he doesn't exist physically, so we can't see, feel, or hear him. And so, our ability to see, feel, and hear other things basically distracts our minds and stops us from perceiving him. They pretty much believe that God is there, but we all have headphones on and can't hear him over the music. And so, naturally, their conclusion is to see what happens when you take the headphones off. A suicidal man volunteers to help them out and undergo a complex procedure where every connection from his brain to his sensory organs is severed. He can now no longer see, hear, taste, smell, or feel anything, but retains the ability to speak and move, even if he can't feel himself moving or hear himself talk. By the scientist's theory, with nothing to get in the way now that his senses are gone, he should be able to talk to God through his thoughts. But their theory is quickly abandoned after 4 days pass and nothing of note happens. Later in that 4th day, though, the man starts to hear faint whispers in his head, but the researchers have already lost hope and chalk it up to him hallucinating. But then, on the 6th day, something happens. The subject suddenly cries out, saying he can hear his dead wife talking to him, and that he can talk back. This development is interesting, but the team isn't convinced. After all, this could just be him going crazy from being able to perceive nothing but his own thoughts for a week. That is, until he starts naming deceased loved ones of the scientists, giving personal information about them that he couldn't possibly have known beforehand. A significant portion of the research team leaves the study after this incident. By day 11, the man reveals that he's now hearing hundreds of voices at the same time, and it's overwhelming him. He starts repeatedly throwing himself into walls to try and elicit a pain response and feel something outside of his mind. How did he know where the walls were if he couldn't? It doesn't matter. He asks the researchers for sedatives so he can escape the noise while he sleeps. This only works for 3 days, though, and he starts hearing the voices of the dead in his dreams. On the 15th day, he starts trying to feel pain again by clawing at his eyes, yelling that the voices are louder and more hostile now. They're telling him about hell and the end of the world, leading him to beg the scientists to kill him after screaming nothing but the words, "No heaven, no forgiveness," for 5 hours. His requests are refused, since the remaining scientists have renewed conviction in their theory and believe he's close to proving it. By the 16th day, he's so distressed he can't speak coherently anymore, and starts trying to tear his arms open to end the study himself. The researchers restrain him, and after a few hours, he abruptly stops moving and screaming, instead just staring straight ahead and silently crying. This goes on for the next 2 weeks, to the point that he has to be manually rehydrated from how much he was crying. Until, one day, a month into the test, he suddenly turns his head and makes direct eye contact with one of the scientists, despite being completely blind. He whispers, "I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us." And then his heart stops, with no apparent cause. I mean, the study did work. They wanted to prove that God exists, and they did. He's just gone, and everyone goes to hell no matter what. Was this peer-reviewed? Jokes aside, it's in this video for a reason. This one's easily up there in my list of favorites. I'm not religious, so when horror media plays on religious themes, it doesn't get to me all that much. Except this one for some reason. And I can't talk about this story without mentioning the video associated with it. I'm not sure how the connection was made, since what happens in the video is nothing like what's described in the story, but it is still pretty unsettling. The video in question is called Transfiguration, a performance piece by French artist Olivier de Sagazin, where he sits in front of a camera and covers his head in clay and hair. It's art, I don't know, man. Considering the lack of any music or background noise, eerily blank setting, and the fact that Olivier's doing some pretty freaky things to his face, it's not hard to see why the story got so popular. It easily holds up on its own, but its ties to this definitely helped it out. Annie96's typing was apparently posted by Pascal Chatterjee sometime around 2014. It's formatted as a series of DMs between two friends named Annie and David. Annie messages David late at night to ask if he's still awake, since the wind is so loud it's keeping her up. David answers, and they talk for a bit, with Annie mentioning again how abnormally loud the wind seems. After a few more messages, Annie stops the conversation, hearing footsteps in the gravel outside. David tells her to get her dad to check it out, but she tells him she can't, since her family's on vacation, and she's home alone. She eventually gets up to look out the window, and sees a man on his hands and knees, digging in the garden. David tells her to leave him, and he'll go away, but then he starts to turn around. David asks her what he looks like, and she tells him this isn't funny, and asks how he's doing it. David is confused and asks her what she's talking about, and she tells him she can see him in the garden and wants to know how he's typing without a phone in his hands. She bangs on the window to get his attention, but he keeps saying he has no idea what she's talking about. She tells him to stop playing around, that she can see his face and the football jacket he's wearing, so she knows it's him. He insists he's not there, and it's just someone who looks like him, but she says it must be one of his friends then, since the man's wearing David's jacket. He says it can't be, since none of his friends look like him. It's some random person who has similar clothes. The figure starts digging again, and Annie asks David if his name is on the jacket. He says it is, that everyone on the team got one personalized with their name on the back, and she says the jacket has his name on it. He tells her that's impossible since he has the jacket there in his room. The figure then looks up at the window, smiles unnaturally at her, and gets up, heading towards the house. David tells her to call the police, but she isn't responding anymore, so he does it himself, telling her it'll take half an hour for them to get there. She finally gets back to him and tells him the figure made it inside, and she's hiding in the closet with a knife and the lights off. He asks her if she knows where in the house he is, but she says it's not a he, it's an it. The way it looked when it saw her in the window wasn't human. David tells her help will be there soon, and Annie says the thing is calling out to her in a deep, resounding voice that doesn't sound anything like him. It keeps repeating, "Come out, Annie, I just want to look at you," as it slowly comes up the stairs, stepping irregularly like it doesn't know how to walk. Annie asks David if he can make it stop somehow, since whatever's happening must have something to do with him. Why else would this thing that's chasing her look exactly like him? He says he doesn't know what to do, and the intruder starts scraping something on the walls as it comes up the hallway towards her. He tells her he's trying, and then she says the thing's slowing down, telling him to try harder since whatever he's doing is working. Eventually, Annie says that the sound stopped completely, and David tells her to stay in the closet until the police get there. Annie thanks him and asks him to come over in the morning, since she really needs to see him after everything that happened. He agrees, and she says she can't wait. But then, David seems to realize something. He asks, "Annie, how do I know this is you?" And then Annie 96 goes offline. The ending of Annie 96's typing is easily one of the most famous plot twists in creepypasta history, but not for the reason you might be thinking. That ending moment is a really nice sting, but that's not all there is to it. What's special about this story is that you can't do it justice by just listening to it, since you'd miss out on its visual elements. Not a picture or a video or anything, I could have put that on screen. In the text of the story itself, you can actually see where Annie is killed and the intruder takes over. Here, right after she says it's scraping something on the walls and getting closer, the format of her messages changes. When Annie was actually typing earlier, she wouldn't capitalize the letter after a period or question mark, but she does in every message after that point. Normal Porn for Normal People was posted by Cosby DAF in 2012 and tells the story of a user of a certain message board who receives a chain email from a stranger. Normally, they would ignore such messages, but this one was interesting. It read, "Hi there, found this site is very nice, thought you might like. normalpornfornormalpeople.com. Pass it on for the good of mankind." Having nothing better to do, they make sure their antivirus is on and opens up the website, only to find a very basic page with none of the accompanying visuals you'd expect given the title. The site features a wall of incoherent text with a tagline reading, "Normal porn for normal people. a website dedicated to the eradication of abnormal sexuality. This confuses the narrator, and they're about to click off when they realize that every word on the main page is actually a hyperlink. They then do a very smart thing that a very smart person would do in this situation, and opens one of them, finding that it leads to another similarly blank page with nothing but a long list of URLs. They click one, which leads to another list of seemingly completely different links. Finally, one of the URLs on this page opens a video file called peanut.avi. It's a 30-minute long compilation of two people in a kitchen feeding peanut butter to a dog at different times of day. Weirded out, the narrator goes to this mysterious certain message board to show people what they found, but discovers that someone else who got the same email beat them to it. The other users in the thread have started digging into the series of links like the narrator did, leading to around 20 other videos being found. Most of these are just clips of people talking innocuously to the cameraman in this blank, sterile-looking room with nothing in it except a desk and some chairs. But they also managed to find some that deviate from this. There was Peanut, which the narrator already found, but also another one called Licked Clean. This one is a 10-minute video from a hidden camera of a repairman fixing a washing machine. After 2 minutes, he talks to the owner and then leaves, before the owner starts licking the washing machine for the rest of the video. Jimbo.avi is of an overweight man miming for about 5 minutes before the camera cuts suddenly and shows him crying with his costume and makeup still on. Diana.avi is another interview-style video, but it's in what looks like someone's living room instead of the blank room the rest were filmed in. It shows 4 minutes of a violinist talking and then playing her violin, but she seems distracted by something off-screen. One of the users notices that there's a mirror in the background that shows a man in a chicken mask doing things to himself while she plays. Jessica.avi is also a 4-minute long interview, this time happening outside on the street. Nothing weird actually happens in the video. The woman being interviewed just talks about canoes the whole time. What's strange is that the camera zooms out to show the street they're on several times, but no one has ever been able to track down the location where it was filmed. Tonguetied.avi is a 10-minute video of an old lady kissing a mannequin. Halfway through, though, the audio cuts out, and the video switches to a group of mannequins standing in a circle around the camera for the last 5 minutes. Stumps.avi is a 5-minute video of a man with no legs breakdancing on a DDR mat in what looks like a much dirtier version of the kitchen from Peanut. After 4 minutes, the man collapses and starts breathing heavily, pleading with someone off-screen to let him stop. This person becomes terrifyingly enraged and berates the man, who starts dancing again. The person off-screen starts to scream at him, and the video cuts abruptly. Privacy.avi was filmed in the blank interview room, and shows the violinist from Diana doing things to herself on a mattress while the amputee from the last video walks around the room on his hands with some kind of Halloween mask on. There's a door in the background of this video that was closed in all the interviews, but is open in this one, revealing a dark hallway. Near the end of the clip, some kind of animal runs quickly past the doorway. The last video the users managed to find is an 18-minute clip called useless.avi. It's once again filmed in the blank room, but shows a woman seen in one of the ordinary interviews bound to a mattress with her mouth taped. Near the 7-minute mark, a masked man in a suit opens the door, but doesn't go in. Instead, the thing that ran down the hallway in the last video does, revealing it to be a shaved chimpanzee coated in paint. The man closes the door behind it, and it sniffs the air for a while like it's blind. Eventually, it notices the woman on the mattress and goes into a frenzy, mauling her to death for 7 minutes, and then starting to eat pieces of her until the clip cuts off. The thread blew up after this discovery, and the discussion continued for hours after as this disturbing website got more and more attention. But when the narrator goes to check the thread the next day, they find that it was deleted at some point during the night. They try to start a new thread to keep the discussion going, but their account gets banned after they do. They can't get a response from the email that sent them the website, and they get kicked off every other board they mention it on. After around 3 days, Normal Porn for Normal People itself gets deleted, with the only proof of its existence now being some screenshots and the few strange videos that were saved from it, notably the last one, Useless, which spread around several gore sites. But, after a while, even those images and clips end up getting mysteriously deleted from wherever they're posted. This is unironically one of my favorite creepypastas. I know it's not the easiest story to take seriously sometimes, but I still like it. I think it does a great job building up suspense, with each new video the users find gradually getting more unsettling, but not by so much that it feels like it escalates too quickly. There's something off about all of them, but that something's not right here factor slowly gets stronger and stronger up until the climax. I also find that it plays on that strange, dreadful feeling of doing something or being somewhere you're not supposed to, and I think it does it very well. The ending isn't amazing, but it is still pretty effective. It makes you wonder why all traces of this site's existence are being wiped from the internet. Just who are these normal people that this normal porn is made for? Where Bad Kids Go is an anonymously written story posted in 2011. It tells of a journalist recalling a disturbing propaganda show they watched while living in Lebanon during the Civil War. The episodes were about 30 minutes long and clearly targeted at kids, with each being focused around a traditional Middle Eastern moral. Things like bad kids stay up late, bad kids have their hands under the covers while they sleep, and bad kids steal food from the fridge at night. The then 6 or 7-year-old journalist didn't understand much of what was going on, since the show was in Arabic and they didn't speak it very well. But the imagery used in the show was graphic enough to get the point across, even with the language barrier. What stuck out most about the show, though, was that at the end of every episode, the camera would slowly zoom in on an old metal door. As the door gets closer and closer, sound effects of kids screaming, sometimes in pain, would get louder and louder. Arabic text reading, "That's where bad kids go," would appear on the screen before the episode faded out and ended. The show stuck with the journalist for the rest of their life, even after they left Lebanon and got the job they have now in their early 20s. Eventually, they can't take it anymore and need to get some answers. They look into the studio that produced the show and track down its location, only to find it long abandoned since production had stopped at the end of the war. They make their way in and find that the building had been burned out from the inside. They explore and eventually come across a room in an isolated, out-of-the-way section of the studio. They go up to the heavy, degraded door and eventually break it open. Inside is a small room with a floor covered in human waste, blood, and tiny pieces of bone. What the journalist sees when they look up is even more horrifying, though, because hanging from the middle of the ceiling is a caged microphone. Hello, I am very good at making YouTube videos and definitely didn't forget to both write and record an outro section for this story. Did you get it? It actually was where bad kids go. Lebanese Civil War? I didn't know they were so progressive back then. I'm a 911 operator, just had the most terrifying call, is what it says on the tin. It was posted by Higgs Thunder in 2015 and is told from the perspective of a 911 operator, who gives us a transcript of a particularly unsettling call they recently took. The caller explains that he woke up and went to get some water, but heard snow crunching outside. He went to see what it was, and found a disoriented-looking man walking in circles in his front yard about 30 feet away from the window. The operator tells him the police are on their way, and asks him if his doors and windows are locked. He says he knows his front door is, but isn't sure about the back, and goes to check. He thanks the operator for their help as he looks back at the window, but stops mid-sentence. The operator asks what happened, and he tells them the man is still there, but he's upside down. He's in the same spot, but instead of stumbling around in circles, he's doing a handstand in the snow while staying perfectly still. The caller can see him staring straight at him and smiling wide, noticing that his teeth are much bigger than they should be. The operator tells him to keep an eye on the man, but that they still need him to check the door. He looks away for less than a second to make sure the deadbolt is engaged, and when he turns back to the window, he sees the man's face pressed right up to it, still smiling and staring intently at him. He comments again about how huge the man's teeth are, and that he's not moving at all, this time noting that his eyes have no color in them. The operator tells him to lock himself in another room, and the caller agrees. Before he does it, they ask him if there's anyone else in the house with him, to which he says no, but then stops himself. He tells the operator that when he said he was alone in the house, the man outside started shaking his head no. There's a loud noise, and the caller stops responding. Short and sweet, the best kind of creepypasta. I mean, there is a part 2 that makes it a little longer, but it's not very good and doesn't really add all that much to the original anyway, so I like to pretend it doesn't exist, and that's why I'm not including it. Candle Cove is a story posted by internet horror legend Chris Straub in 2009. It's formatted as a thread on a nostalgia forum started by a user named Skyshell33 asking about a kids show called Candle Cove. They say they remember watching it on a local station in Ironton, Ohio in the early 70s, and that it came on at a weird time late in the afternoon. They add that they can't find any reference to it online, and ask if anyone else remembers it. Another user named MikePainter65 says he grew up in that same area, and that the show sounds familiar. He remembers it being a puppet show about pirates with a live-action little girl. They add on to the pirate theme, saying they remember a really creepy character called Pirate Percy, who looked like he was made of different doll parts that didn't fit together. A third user, Jaren2005, chimes in, saying they watched the show on the local channel 58. They say the little girl was named Janice, and she was the main character, with the pirates being her imaginary friends. They add that Percy was a character who got scared easily, and the puppet's pirate ship was called the Laughingstock. This comment jogs Sky's memory, and they confirm the Laughingstock being a character and the show airing on Channel 58, thereby confirming that Local 58 canonically takes place in Ohio. They described the Laughingstock having a giant smiling face on its bow that talked in a chilling voice. Mike and Sky bring up the Laughingstock's catchphrase of, "You have to go inside," and how it would always say that to Percy when he was too scared to go in a dark place. Sky then asks if anyone remembers the villain, whose face was just a giant mustache with really long teeth. Jaren says the puppet with the mustache was just a sidekick, and the real villain was called the Skin Taker. A fourth user, Kevin Hart, elaborates on the Skin Taker, saying how he was a dirty skeleton with a brown hat and cape, and eyes that were too big for his head. Sky remembers his clothes being covered in stitches and asks if they were supposed to be made of skin. Mike says they were, even recalling a specific scene where Janice asks the Skin Taker why his jaw slid from side to side instead of opening and closing. The Skin Taker then looked right into the camera and said, "To grind your skin." Sky reiterates their relief that they're not the only one with these memories, and mentions a recurring nightmare they would have about the show. They dreamed that they were watching it one night, and after the theme song ended, the entire episode was just the puppets screaming and flailing around while Janice cried in the background. But Kevin and Jaren both remember seeing the same thing, and not in a dream. It was an actual episode. The final post in the thread is made by Mike, who went to visit his mom and ask her about the show to see if she remembered anything they were forgetting. She was surprised that he remembered it at all, and when he asked why, she said that she always thought it was strange how he would tell her he was gonna watch Candle Cove, but then tune the TV to static and watch dead air for half an hour. The local 58 lore runs deep, I don't know what to tell you. The Girl in the Photograph is an anonymously written story posted in 2010. It tells of a boy named Tom who notices something out the window while he's in math class. It looks like a picture sitting in the grass, and he rushes outside once the bell rings to make sure no one else can get to it before he does. He picks the thing up and finds that he was right. It is a picture. The picture shows a girl in a dress, tights, and red shoes holding up a peace sign. Tom is instantly infatuated with the girl and goes around the schoolyard asking everyone he can if they know who she is. No one he asks recognizes her, and he goes home devastated. He asks his sister if she knows the girl, and gets the same response. Defeated, Tom goes to bed, only to be woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of giggling and a fingernail tapping on his window. He can see a shadow outside, and gets out of bed to open the window and listen for the giggling, but it's gone by the time he gets there. He spends some time the next day asking his parents and neighbors about the picture, but they too have no idea who she is. That night, he's woken again by the same sounds, but this time, they don't stop. He grabs the picture and follows the giggling outside, knowing it must be coming from the girl he's been looking for. As he crosses the road, a car runs straight into him and kills him on impact. The driver gets out and goes to check on him, but sees that there's nothing he can do. Then, he notices that the boy was holding a picture. He picks it up and looks at it, seeing that it was of a cute girl holding up 3 fingers. I'm going to be honest, this story is not written very well. You're lucky I'm paraphrasing all these. I don't think there's a single sentence in this original post that's longer than 10 words. But that ending is classic, so I couldn't not include it. White with Red was posted anonymously in 2008 and tells the story of a man who has a strange interaction while checking into a hotel. As the woman at the front desk gives him his room key, she tells him about an unnumbered door that he'll pass on his way and that he has to stay away from it. He isn't allowed to open it or even try and look inside under any circumstances. He follows her instructions and leaves the door alone as he walks to his room. The next morning, though, his curiosity gets the better of him, and he heads over to the forbidden room to see what the big deal is. He tries the handle and realizes it's locked, so he decides to see what he can make out by looking through the keyhole. Cool air passes through as he puts his eye up to it, and what he sees confuses him. The door leads to a hotel room, just like his, with a woman standing in the corner. Her skin looks chalk white, and she's facing away from him with her head leaning on the wall. He thinks about knocking to get her attention, but decides not to. He returns to the door the next day and peeks through the keyhole again, only to see nothing but red. There was some kind of solid red mass right in front of the keyhole that was blocking his view. He thinks about it and realizes that the woman he saw probably found out what was happening and put a red towel or something over the doorknob to stop him from seeing inside. After this, he finally decides to do what he probably should have done in the first place and goes back to the front desk to ask the employee what the deal with the door is. She sighs and asks him if he looked through the keyhole. He admits that he did, and she tells him a sort of local legend about the hotel. The story says that a long time ago, a married couple checked in and stayed in the room that now has no number. During their stay, the husband murdered the wife, and her ghost now haunts that room, which is why no one can go in. But that's not all, because the couple weren't regular people. They were completely white all over, except for their eyes, which were red. It's short, it's simple, but it works. It doesn't explain anything, but it doesn't have to. Like with the girl in the photograph, the ending's in this nice Goldilocks zone of not being so ambiguous that you're not sure what's going on, but still without spelling it out for you. You still have to connect the dots yourself and get that realization moment that enhances the scare. You can actually say that about most of these, actually. Except normal porn and Gateway of the Mind. There's not really a lot of interpretation you can do there. Alright, that's it. Hit the like if you like it, hit the dislike if you don't. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to see more when there's more to see, but until then, I'm out.